What's going on? Welcome back to the New Life Young Adults podcast. My name is Abel. I am joined here with my co-host, Zach.
What's up?
Lauren will be back soon. She is recovering from P72, Project 72. If you haven't heard about that, it's our discipleship program here at the church at New Life. Check it out. There's tons of videos and content coming out soon about that, testimonies, all that good stuff. It's awesome to see what God is doing. But we want to talk about prayer and fasting. We are stepping into a season of prayer and fasting real soon. New Life has a practice as a church, which I love, by the way. Side note, because not a lot of churches practice this. A time period of a couple of weeks or whatever it is to just focus on fasting and prayer. And we are stepping into that season in January. So for 21 days, we will be intentionally, as a church, fasting and praying together. And so we want to talk about that, what that looks like, why we do it, how it can be done, and what is the importance of prayer and fasting, what even is prayer and fasting. So maybe we can start there, Zach. When I say prayer and fasting, and when we talk about prayer and fasting, what are you thinking about? What comes to mind? What is it to you? How have you participated in it?
I think about being hungry. Fasting. Fasting comes loaded with all kinds of things. We talk about it like in relation to like diets and like different things like that. But this is like a spiritual practice that we do as a church together that has been practiced for thousands of years. We're taking part in a tradition. So when I think of fasting, I think of taking something out of my life and replacing it with intentional time to draw near and to connect with the Lord. That's kind of what I think of as the heart of fasting. And what it's typically been practiced as is taking away, abstaining from food, from meals for a specific period of time while you are kind of pursuing the Lord in some way. Maybe it's a specific prayer that you are hoping to get answered or a breakthrough that you're wanting to have happen. Every year we do it communally, which I think is beautiful to do it as a community. We do it communally as a church, and we ask the question, what would it look like to pursue the Lord together for individual things, but also for community things as well. In the past, I've never been a part of a church that has done it as a whole like that. And so it's been interesting to do it with New Life in the past, 5 years I've been here. And it's kind of changed every year. Last year I did a fast that was where I abstained from food until about 6 p.m. Mm-hmm. So every day I wouldn't eat breakfast, would not eat lunch, but would eat dinner. And that was really difficult. I'm not going to lie.
That is tough. Yeah.
I like food. I like being comfortable. I like not suffering. And without breakfast and lunch, I was feeling it for sure. In previous years, I've done things where maybe I fasted lunch, and instead of taking a lunch break, I'll do a prayer time, different things like that. But it's really the question of I try to ask myself, what can I abstain from in my life that allows me to replace that with intentional time of pursuing the Lord?
Yeah. No, that's good. Yeah. I think to add on to that, I did a similar fast last year. I did the past 2 years I've done it. It's been fasting breakfast and lunch, and then I'll eat dinner and have a window of time that I'll eat. 7 to 9 I'll eat. And then, that's extremely difficult. And I know some people who do different fast, like water fast or Daniel fast. And I think what's important about specifically fasting, you're right. It's not just an intermittent diet fast to lose weight. Although that is probably one of the benefits of fasting, right? And probably why the Lord in his sovereignty knew to ask people to fast, because it helps you lose weight. But that's definitely not the main reason for fasting, right? And I think what's especially important with fasting is you're not just fasting to fast, but you're fasting and you're replacing it with something else, specifically spending time with God and intentional pressing into God, right? And we've seen a lot of cool breakthroughs happen during fast seasons. People get answered prayers and people experience breakthrough. And it's not that you're manipulating God's hand to answer a prayer or to see a breakthrough. But I really do believe if you genuinely approach fasting with an authentic heart and a desire to press into the Lord and let the experience and spending time with him be the reward, and whatever comes of that, then that's when you know your heart is in the right posture, right? When you're pressing in and fasting to get a promise instead of getting the promiser, or to get a blessing instead of getting the one who blesses, you've missed a point. The reward is in the blesser, not the blessing.
Yeah. That's so good. Yeah. And so important. What I found is like, and this is with prayer in general, even like, it's not that God is not already attentive to you and doesn't already know what you need or any of these things. But what fasting does and what prayer does is what it really, really does is it removes things from our lives that can kind of get in the way of connection and aligns us with God and who he is. And, like I'll see prayers answered because I'm praying prayers that I wouldn't pray otherwise because I'm busy doing other things. Yeah. My time is built on all kinds of other stuff. Yeah. I'm watching Netflix while on my lunch break or different things like that. So just the fact that I'm spending time means I'm praying more, means I'm actually seeing more prayers answered because I'm actually praying, like things like that. And I love what you said, that it's the blesser, not the blessing that you're after. Yeah. God responds to us, whether we pray and fast, but we are attentive to whether or not he responds to us. And, he does decide to bless our efforts to draw near at times, but it's not because we're trying, it's not like here's your little reward, little follower. Thanks for putting in your time. Yeah. But it's after that deeper relationship and alignment. So that's what I like to think of. I'm aligning myself. I'm tuning into the signal that God is already putting out and aligning myself with it, because I spend so much of my time, my lifetime, unaligned with that signal.
Yeah, I would think it's similar to, I'm not married, but I would think it's similar to marriage in that the reward of marriage isn't the benefits you get from being married. The reward is that there's a relationship that has been formed and cultivated, that you get to experience life in oneness with this person. And then the extra stuff that comes with that is just like, oh, this is sweet. Like on top of all the relationship, the relationship is the reward. The person is the reward. And when I say reward, I don't mean like you've won them in that, I mean,
objectifying the person.
Yeah, right. You're experiencing this genuine, intentional, authentic, beautiful relationship. That's a reward. Yeah. That's the
enjoyment of that.
The enjoyments of that.
Yeah. If you invest time in your relationship, if you invest quality time, you will see like results from that. Right. Yes. And so like that's what we're saying is, if you invest your time in pursuing the Lord, you will naturally see results in that. You'll naturally, and those are, try not to guarantee anything. I think we're trying to cover our bases. Yeah. We're not guaranteeing or promising these great breakthroughs, these great rewards. For sure but what you will get, God doesn't always promise those things, but he does promise himself.
Yes.
And that is good enough to last when the things that you're hoping to come don't come.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Even when the circumstance isn't how you would want it to be, and God's in the midst of that circumstance. And so you cling to that. You cling to him in the midst of the circumstance, good or bad, breakthrough or not breakthrough, because he's the reason, right? It's him. He's the source. Yeah. Like that's your reward. Anything on top of that, cherry on top.
Yeah. Yeah. So fasting, one thing fasting does is like, especially when it comes to food, and we'll talk a bit more about what other kinds of fasts there are. But what often happens is like, I'm actually feeling hungry right now. It's about lunchtime when we're recording this. And those hunger pains remind me I need sustenance right now. I need something to fill me up, or else my body will stop functioning well. Yeah. I need energy, right? I need my body to convert that food into energy. And one thing that fasting does, one way we practice fasting is while we're abstaining from food or whatever it is, those hunger cues, those hunger pains that we get, that our body's saying, hey, we need something in order to like thrive, in order to flourish as a body. That's kind of what happens to us spiritually. When we get those physical hunger pains, we turn that to a spiritual reminder. Yeah. Hey, you need something outside of yourself in order to survive and to thrive. And in the same way, that's how it works spiritually as well. Yeah. You are spiritually hungry and you need sustenance. And we decide to like how Jesus says, and he quotes Deuteronomy, man does not live on bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. So we're living on the word. We're living on the communion with God. not relying on human things, not denying that our bodies need that, but it's a spiritual exercise based on this physical exercise.
Yeah. And Jesus did fasting himself. You know, there's the famous experience he has after 40 days and 40 nights of fasting. I may be wrong. Food and water, right? Food and water, right? And after that experience, right, that's when he gets tempted. During that before that experience, after that,
he fasts for 40 days,
right?
And then the tempter comes,
right? And then the tempter comes. Yes,
yeah.
And so it's like, if we were to take that experience, Jesus fasting didn't bring him breakthrough. Ultimately, it did, but it brought actually temptation at his weakest point. And so, you know, that's why we can't sit here and say fasting is an automatic guarantee to breakthrough and to some sort of external reward. What sustained Jesus was his relationship with God, was his relationship with the Father in the midst of the temptation. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
My kind of mindset was shifted last year when we did the 21 prayer and fast. I believe it was Pastor Galen who presented this idea. Shout out to Pastor Galen from Rogers Park and Albany Park. But and he may have read this somewhere else as well. But he brought up the idea that yes, the Satan, the tempter, came to Jesus when he was at his physical weakest.
Yeah.
He was weak physically, and Satan saw that and was like, I'm going to come at this point.
Yeah.
But Pastor Galen said, what if actually Jesus in that moment was at his strongest because of the prayer and fasting, because of the 40 days of drawing close to the Lord, being intimate with God, being in tune with his spirit, that then set him up to resist the temptation because he was living off the word of God, not bread, you know? And that shifted my mindset because and that doesn't change what you said. It's still true.
Yeah.
We are weak physically.
Yes.
But seeking a time of spiritual strength.
Yeah.
And that's the goal. That's the purpose. The spiritual alignment that leads to spiritual strength that allows you to resist the temptations. Yeah. And bro, I remember the first time I took part in fasting with New Life.
Yeah.
I was working a carpentry job at my school, and I decided, all right, you know what? I'm going to try this. I'm going to try fasting from food. I never had really done that before. And so I go to work that day one. I'm so excited. Oh yeah, I'm going to have all this breakthrough. Walk in, and my manager is like, hey, Zach, the painting company that we work with, they wanted to express their gratitude for us being a partner with them. They gave us 12 boxes of donuts. And we have like 7 employees. So please eat as much as you can and then take some home.
Oh,
and bro, I was already so hungry.
Yeah.
And I walked into that lunchroom and saw those donuts. I was like, oh, Satan, you tempting me, man. What's going on here? My first day, or maybe it was the first week. I don't know if it was the first day, but I was so tempted. I don't remember if I took a donut or not. I don't remember.
Right.
Yeah, I don't remember, you know, who knows? But that temptation came in that physical weakness, you know, but it reminded me of my propensity to give into temptation.
Sure. Yeah.
And then my need for it reveals my needs. It also reveals my desires. Like, man, I want that donut. And that donut's not very good for me, and definitely not those 12 boxes.
And you could be honest about that.
Yeah.
And it's okay to be honest about that. Your desires and the temptations and the things that lure you.
Yeah. So fasting can also be a time of kind of self-discovery, revelation about yourself, and getting to know yourself even more. Yeah. So you're getting to know the Lord more while you're getting to know yourself, your needs, your desires, your wants, who you become when you don't have food, when you don't have, all of these things. So it's really could be an effective time of all of these things.
That reminded me of a quote that says to really know God and to really love God is to really know yourself. And it's to really be self-aware of who you are. I think a lot of times in the Christian world, we can be quick to dismissing our desires, the ones good and bad, our temptations, and we can put on a front like we're not as broken as we think we are. But I think, man, when you get to that point where you can be self-aware and be honest and real about your desires, temptations, lures, that's when you can get to a point where it becomes, you become needy for God. And I think a lot of us wrestle with neediness, especially in the West and in American culture, because we don't want to be needy. We want to be independent. And we want to be able to be self-sustained and provide for ourselves. We don't want to be needy. Needy's not cute. Needy's not attractive. Needy's not sexy. Needy sucks. But when you can get to a point where you are needy for the Lord, and I think that's where fasting kicks in. Like fasting can accelerate that when you realize, whoa, I'm not as self-sustaining as I thought I was. No, you're not. And that's a good thing to know that.
Yeah.
And to get to a point where you are needy for God, because that neediness and that humility is where that intimacy with the Lord really starts to build. And when you build intimacy with the Lord, wisdom can come in, which then allows you to live in a way that honors him, it's righteous living. But it all starts with the neediness that can be accelerated by fasting. It can be a gasoline to the fire.
We are not as strong as we think we are.
No.
Take away that Big Mac out your day, bro. You become a mess of a person.
You need a Snickers. You know, like the Snickers, the Snickers commercials.
Yeah.
Eat a Snickers.
You're not you when you're hungry.
That's me. 21 days of
not
fasting.
A sponsor.
No.
All of that, the goal of fasting being alignment, attunement with the Lord, seeking after the Lord, the ability to know ourselves, our desires, our needs, our wants, our going to the Lord in prayer, all those things. For all those reasons, I actually think it's really a really effective thing when maybe sometimes food isn't the best thing to give up for fasting. I actually think one of the best things that we in this age, people our age, young adults, teenagers, and I'm not even going to say just them, adults, I'm talking to you too if you're listening.
Yeah.
Like in this day and age, it's a really good thing to fast from social media or from technology or from movies or from Netflix or different things like that.
What's taking your time? Like what is taking your time currently that you can fast from? Maybe it's working out, like, whatever it is,
Yeah. And so asking the question, what is taking my time? What is the object of my desire? What am I depending on? What is all of these things? What is taking away what could be, used for spending time with the Lord? Now, it doesn't mean that those things are necessarily bad or wrong.
Yeah.
But it's giving those things up for the sake of this intimacy, this pursuing. And the reason why I think like social media or technology is really good is because first of all, we spend so much time on it.
Yeah.
We've come to depend on it for entertainment, for all kinds of things.
Yes.
And like our bodies have come to depend on it as well. Like our brains have been, molded to depend on the dopamine that we get from notifications, that we get from scrolling. We don't have to hash through all that data, but we all are kind of depressingly familiar with that.
Yep.
But I feel when I go without my phone, I feel the urge to pick it up.
Yeah.
I feel the urge to check. I feel the urge to look at things. I'm constantly like opening my phone and looking for notifications that aren't there.
Yeah.
And so what if I channeled all of those little cues that my body is depending on into saying, oh, here's a time to connect with the Lord. Here's a time to lift up a little prayer. Here's a time to check in with God and things like that. That I think could be so powerful for people in our day and age who depend so much, who have so much of their lives depending on social media or different things like that. And there are other things like you mentioned as well that could be good.
Yeah. And I think let's be real too. Like it's not just like the stuff that is not necessarily bad, like social media or whatever it is, shows, movies, but it's also the stuff that is bad. Like maybe you have to give up a pornography addiction. Maybe you need to give up the drinking. Maybe this is the perfect window for you to take some of those bad habits that you've been forming for the past several years and to capitalize on 21 days of fasting and be intentional about bringing those to light and letting those things go and seeing how the Lord in you building intimacy with him. Maybe, just maybe, the reason your intimacy with the Lord has been so shallow is because you've allowed these things to continue to take your attention away. It's not that I think sometimes we think that God's punishing us by not giving us intimacy. A lot of times we're just distracted. Yeah. We are just straight up distracted, and we equate that to punishment. But how are you ever to build a relationship deeply with somebody if every time you go to talk to them, you're distracted by your thoughts, you're distracted by your phone, you would never build an intimate relationship with them, right? And it's the same thing with addictions or different patterns in our different habits in our lives that distract us from God. And because of that distraction, we experience a lack of intimacy. It's not God punishing you. You're really punishing yourself by continuing in that habit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's great. It reminds me of the movie Meet the Robinsons, the bowler hat guy. He's telling his backstory. His name was Goob when he was a kid.
Great movie.
A great movie.
Love that movie.
And he's like talking about like, they all hated me. And it shows him walking through school and they're like, hey Goob, hey, how's it going, Goob? Hey, what's up? They all hated me. It's like they're all trying to reach out to him. He has decided that they have hated him, you know, which is always like funny for me. But I love what you just said there. That's so good. It reminded me of that. What if this fasting season can be the beginning of that breakthrough in that pornography addiction?
Right. Yeah.
What if it could be the breakthrough in that alcohol dependency and or in a relationship that you haven't, repaired? This could be a beautiful time to really press in to all of those things. And really the goal is not just to give up something.
Right.
That's what makes us different from a diet.
You're right.
You are not just giving up food to lose weight, to look better, to all these things or whatever. You're not just giving something up. You are replacing it with something, and specifically with time with the Lord or things that contribute to your spiritual health. Yeah. And so you give something up that you are dependent on or that is a significant part of your life. And you replace it with something that is life-giving and connects you with the Lord and attunes you to his heart and the intimacy that he's offering, but you're too distracted to embrace and receive. Yeah. And that's the beauty of fasting.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. We just did an episode on building new habits. Instead of setting New Year's resolutions and goals, what would it look like to implement new habits? Man, what would it look like for you to implement after even the 21 days of fasting, implementing a rhythm of fasting? Maybe it's once a month or a weekend a month or whatever you decide to do. But what can you continue to do outside of the 21 days of fasting to continue to implement rhythms of dependency on God that will heighten your dependency and heighten your neediness for the Lord, and not just leave it to, it's something we do in January, but it's not something I do the rest of the year. It's like, no, the point of doing it in January is to get your mind on it and help you establish those rhythms at the beginning of the year so that you can continue in them the rest of the year.
Yeah. Yeah. What does a once a week fast, once a month fast, every other month, what does it look like to become a part of your life? Yeah, I love that. There's so many things. Invite people, like make a commitment this season to some kind of prayer and fast. Even if you're listening to this late, do it, join late, or do it in March or April, whatever you're listening. I don't know, but make a commitment. Try it out. See what happens. There are different types of fasts. Your location probably has different resources. I know there's always a guide that goes out. Look into all that stuff. Invite people into it as well. Don't do it alone. Yeah. Have people hold you accountable, people you can reflect with, even pray with. I know each location does like prayer nights and worship nights to join in on. So just don't do it alone. Make a commitment, pursue it in community, and see what the Lord does. Yeah,
something that I've been learning about recently too is just reflection, and how actually we grow the most when we reflect. And so after 21 days of fasting, take some time to reflect, or even in the midst of it, take some time to reflect. What is God teaching me? What is he showing me? What is being exposed? What is he asking me to bring out? What is he addressing in my life? I think growth happens when we're able to receive feedback, but we're also able to reflect on what is happening around us, in us, to our body, to our emotions, to our mind, to our relationship with the Lord. When you reflect, you gather information that you can then use at your disposal to apply and grow in your life. So,
yeah. Great. Yeah. Well, this has been a great conversation on fasting. I really enjoyed it. Yeah. Just a quick one to get your mind thinking about how can you partake in this. So we'd love to hear from you. If you want to drop a comment or email us or whatever, we'd love to hear back from you. How have you enjoyed fasting? How are you planning to fast this year? And what are other things you'd like to talk about in this, from this podcast? We're always looking for ways to engage. Totally. So by the way, we've had a couple of people approach us and just bring up the podcast and talk about it. And that's been really beautiful for us to, this has always been a tool for deeper connection. Yeah. And not just a podcast for us to like talk and yap and all this stuff. So
we do love yapping.
Yeah, we do love that. But we've loved being able to connect with people. So we'd love to hear from you. And so thanks for watching or listening. We'll see you next time.
Peace.